When the taps in a major modern metropolis go dry, the collapse of human civility doesn't start with rioting in the streets or armed militia standoffs at gas stations. It begins in aisle 4 of your local supermarket, precisely 11 minutes after the municipal pressure gauge hits zero. Watch the security footage from any sudden municipal grid failure over the last 2 decades. The pattern is so predictable it reads like an algorithm. Hundreds of frantic, well-intentioned citizens storm the doors, bypass every essential tool on the shelves, and engage in literal fistfights over 30 packs of plastic bottled water. They load their shopping carts until the axles strain, pay double the standard markup, drive home, stack those blue plastic bricks in the kitchen, and sit back with a profound sense of self-satisfied security. They think they've won. They think they've cracked the code of urban survival. They are completely, lethally wrong. Here is the brutal paradox that civil defense engineers and disaster epidemiologists know, but political leaders will never say into a live microphone. In a real, sustained water outage, buying bottled water is not a solution. It is a psychological pacifier that actively sets you up for failure. The moment municipal water pressure vanishes, your home stops being a sanctuary and instantly transforms into a high-risk biohazard zone. The primary danger isn't dying of thirst on day 2. Human bodies are remarkably resilient at enduring basic dehydration. The actual threat, the silent, invisible cascade that overwhelms households long before the last plastic bottle is empty, is the immediate, catastrophic breakdown of domestic sanitation and fluid management. Consider what actually happens inside a standard 2-story suburban home or a mid-rise urban apartment when the water main collapses. You take a drink from your plastic bottle. Perfect. But then you need to wash the raw chicken juice off your hands before preparing dinner. You need to clean a cutting board. You need to flush a toilet containing human waste that is already emitting ammonia gas into your enclosed living space. You need to wash a child's face, clean an open scrape, or maintain basic skin integrity for an elderly relative whose circulation is compromised. If your entire survival strategy relies on tilting a gallon jug over a sink, you will waste 60% of your priceless liquid supply onto the floor within 48 hours. Worse, without a rigid mathematical protocol for isolating clean fluids from grey water and biological waste, you will cross-contaminate every surface in your living room before the National Guard even deploys its first mobile tanker. In major urban outages across history, from historical urban blockades to modern grid collapses in North America, more people fell critically ill from self-inflicted domestic contamination than from drinking unpurified municipal water. Yet, while 9/10 of the population is tearing down display racks in the beverage section, a small, quiet minority of experienced emergency managers and logistics experts walk right past the beverage aisle. They head straight for the hardware, housewares, and specialized plumbing sections. They bypass the water entirely to grab 18 cheap, everyday items that most families never even consider until the plumbing gives out. Items that cost pennies on the dollar, sit on standard store shelves right now, and completely alter the physics of how a household uses, saves, and protects its water supply. Because storing water is mathematically trivial. Storing 3 gallons per person for a week takes up a corner of a closet. But managing that water, ensuring that every single drop performs 3 distinct tasks before it is safely disposed of, keeping bacterial transfer to absolute zero in a house with no running hot water, and preventing municipal backflow from poisoning your internal pipes, that is the actual discipline of survival. Right now, beneath the streets of almost every major city in the Western world, the infrastructure keeping your taps flowing is operating decades past its engineered lifespan. Cast iron pipes laid during the Truman administration are holding together on prayer and residual sediment. Pumping stations are tied to fragile electrical grids vulnerable to localized cyber attacks, extreme thermal anomalies, and physical strain. When the system fails, not if, but when, the municipal authorities will not have a tanker truck on your street corner within the hour. You will be on your own in a closed ecosystem. The 18 tools we are breaking down today represent the precise difference between a household that navigates a 5-day blackout with total hygienic stability and one that descends into gastrointestinal disaster while sitting on a pile of empty plastic bottles. And the final three items on this list address an invisible structural vulnerability inside your home that almost every mainstream preparedness guide completely ignores. A single oversight that can destroy your entire private water supply in less than 4 seconds. To understand how modern urban populations became entirely dependent on a fragile, pressurized water loop, we must examine the specific engineering decisions and policy failures that created this geographic trap over the last century. Municipal water delivery in North America and Western Europe is not an infinite natural resource. It is a mechanical system operating under continuous artificial pressure. The industrial standard requires municipal lines to maintain a minimum internal pressure of 20 to 40 pounds per square inch. This pressure does not merely push water upward into high-rise residential buildings, it acts as a physical barrier. It prevents groundwater, industrial runoff, and surrounding soil bacteria from infiltrating the distribution network through microfractures in the pipes. The historical roots of our current vulnerability trace back to the massive infrastructure expansions of the mid-20th century. Between 1945 and 1970, urban centres rapidly expanded, laying thousands of miles of cast iron and unlined ductile iron piping. Engineers built these systems with an intended operational lifespan of 50 to 75 years. That timeline has quietly expired. According to reports from the American Society of Civil Engineers, a water main break occurs somewhere in North America every 2 minutes, resulting in an estimated 6 billion gallons of treated drinking water lost daily through aging, deteriorating conduits. The true disaster scenario unfolds when electrical grid instability intersects with this aging physical network. On August 14, 2003, the Northeast blackout demonstrated the speed of this systemic failure. When power tripped across Ohio, Michigan, New York, and parts of Canada, major pumping stations lost primary electricity instantly. In cities like Detroit and Cleveland, backup generators failed to handle the sudden operational load or ran out of fuel reserves within 12 hours. As the pump stopped, line pressure dropped to 0. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. When pressure vanished, a phenomenon known as back siphonage occurred. Depressurized main lines created a negative vacuum, pulling surrounding subterranean fluid, untreated ground runoff, and stagnant groundwater backward through cracked joint seals, directly into the municipal drinking supply. Millions of residents who still had water trickling from their taps were suddenly drawing contaminated fluid into their domestic pipes without knowing it. Health authorities were forced to issue emergency boil water advisories, covering entire metropolitan areas for days after electrical power was restored. This structural vulnerability is further multiplied by modern architectural design. Standard residential high-rises and suburban apartment complexes do not rely on gravity-fed roof towers as older 19th century structures did. Instead, they rely on electric booster pumps located in basements or utility substations to push water above the third floor. The moment grid power drops, every resident living above the ground level loses running water instantly, regardless of how much water remains in the municipal reservoirs miles away. The water is physically present in the regional supply, but it is geographically trapped below the feet of the residents who need it. The economic decisions driving municipal maintenance over the past 40 years have systematically deepened this crisis. Local governments routinely defer underground pipe replacement due to extreme capital costs and political disincentives. Replacing buried municipal main lines requires tearing up active commercial thoroughfares, disrupting transit, and levying tax increases that local electorates consistently reject. As a result, water utilities have shifted from preventative replacement to reactive patching. They repair individual ruptures only after a blowout occurs, leaving the surrounding, equally degraded pipe sections in place to fail during the next thermal shift or pressure fluctuation. This reactive approach has created a severe supply chain mismatch during sudden emergencies. When a major municipal line suffers a multi-point collapse, repair crews require specialized fittings, heavy-duty replacement sleeves, and industrial-grade chlorination equipment. These items are not stocked in massive quantities by municipal public works departments. They are ordered through just-in-time supply networks from centralized regional distributors. If a regional natural disaster, severe weather event, or civil disruption freezes logistics routes, Local repair operations ground to a complete halt, turning a manageable 12-hour repair job into a multi-week municipal outage. Furthermore, the average modern household has zero built-in structural redundancy. In 1950, a significant percentage of residential properties still maintained working shallow wells, rain collection systems, or manual hand pumps. Over the subsequent decades, municipal zoning laws, health codes, and urban renewal projects actively outlawed off-grid water infrastructure within city limits, forcing property owners to hook up exclusively to the central grid. Urban planning decisions systematically eliminated local, decentralized water access points, funneling millions of people into total reliance on a single, centralized intake valve. When that single valve fails, the human response follows a documented economic panic loop. Retail distribution centers operate on automated inventory algorithms optimized for standard daily purchasing habits. A typical grocery store maintains a 2 to 3 day supply of bottled water based on normal consumption rates. When a water main rupture or contamination notice hits the local news cycle, emergency purchasing increases by over 1,000% in less than 2 hours. The retail shelf inventory evaporates long before local authorities can even establish emergency distribution checkpoints. The population is left stranded in a built environment that has been engineered to suppress self-reliance, surrounded by millions of gallons of inaccessible subterranean water, with zero domestic mechanisms left to manage the crisis. While municipal authorities issue press releases urging calm during an unexpected grid failure, the operational reality on the ground deteriorates along predictable biological and structural fault lines. When running water stops, the immediate danger inside a residential building is not dehydration. It is the rapid accumulation of untreated human waste and the immediate breakdown of domestic hygiene barriers. In high-density residential housing, a lack of running water transforms hundreds of individual apartments into isolated biohazard traps within 48 hours. The primary systemic failure occurs within the building's waste disposal network. Standard residential toilets require approximately 1.6 to 3 gallons of liquid per flush to clear the internal trap and propel solid material through lateral drainage lines into the municipal sewer main. When residents continue to use toilets without a pressurized water supply, solid waste accumulates inside the porcelain basin and upper drainage pipes. Without sufficient liquid volume to move waste through the network, organic matter rapidly ferments, releasing methane, hydrogen sulfide, and ammonia gas directly into living quarters through dry plumbing traps. Attempts by untrained residents to flush toilets using random stored liquids often compound the infrastructure damage. Pouring small amounts of grey water or viscous liquids into a toilet bowl fails to create the siphon action necessary to clear the line. Instead, it creates semi-solid blockages within the internal building piping. In multi-story apartment structures, a blockage on a lower floor causes sewage from upper floors to back up through floor drains, bathtubs, and sinks in lower units, rendering entire living spaces physically uninhabitable and creating immediate vectors for enteric pathogens such as Escherichia coli, Salmonella, and norovirus. Simultaneously, household cross-contamination escalates through standard meal preparation and personal cleaning routines. In a functioning household, running hot water and antibacterial cleansers continuously reset the bacterial load on human hands, food contact surfaces, and cooking utensils. During a water outage, residents routinely reuse wash basins, sponges, and towels. Laboratory testing conducted during public health investigations of displaced populations shows that a single damp sponge used to wipe hands or dishes without running water acts as an incubator, spreading bacterial colonies across every counter surface within 24 hours. Food preparation during a utility outage presents an immediate public health hazard. Without running water to rinse raw produce or clean cutting boards between uses, cross-contamination between raw meats and ready-to-eat foodstuffs occurs rapidly. The absence of hot water for dishwashing forces families to either accumulate dirty dishes, which attract disease vectors like flies and rodents, or consume stored food off contaminated surfaces. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention notes that secondary gastrointestinal infections during infrastructure failures frequently outpace primary injuries, overwhelming regional urgent care facilities and emergency rooms that are already operating on emergency backup power and restricted water supplies. The crisis is further complicated by severe policy clashes between local municipal authorities, state management agencies, and private property owners. During prolonged water outages, municipal health departments often issue mandatory evacuation orders for residential structures that lose fire suppression and sanitation capabilities. However, municipal transit systems, facing their own operational restrictions, are rarely equipped to transport thousands of displaced residents to temporary shelters. Property management companies frequently disclaim liability for internal plumbing failures resulting from mainline depressurization, leaving tenants legally responsible for property damage caused by sewage backups or frozen pipes, while insurance providers deny claims by citing utility grid field facial exclusions. In commercial and industrial sectors, the loss of municipal water pressure triggers immediate economic disruption and environmental hazards. Industrial facilities that rely on continuous water cooling loops must initiate emergency shutdowns to prevent catastrophic equipment failure or thermal runaway events. Chemical manufacturing plants, food processing facilities, and medical centers face immediate operational halts. Hospitals, which require thousands of gallons of sterile water daily for boiler operation, medical device sterilization, and renal dialysis units, are forced to implement emergency rationing protocols, cancelling non-emergency surgical procedures, and diverting ambulances to neighboring jurisdictions. Private sector retail networks exacerbate local instability through automated supply chain algorithms. As municipal outages extend past 48 hours, regional distribution centers prioritize high-volume commercial contracts over individual retail stores. Supermarkets in affected zip codes receive fewer shipments of essential sanitation supplies as logistics managers divert inventory to emergency response agencies or national accounts. This creates localized supply deserts where basic hygiene items, sealable waste bags, and portable sanitation equipment become completely unavailable to the general public within hours of a confirmed regional blackout. The psychological impact of domestic sanitation failure introduces an additional layer of behavioral risk. As living spaces become contaminated and basic hygiene routines collapse, household stress levels rise sharply, impairing clear decision-making. Residents frequently resort to unsafe measures, such as collecting water from urban runoff channels, stagnant decorative ponds, or contaminated industrial drainage ditches, without adequate mechanical filtration or chemical disinfection capabilities. Public health data indicates that a significant percentage of waterborne poisonings during urban disasters occur when panicked individuals attempt to purify chemically contaminated surface water using household bleach in incorrect concentrations, creating toxic chlorine compounds inside unventilated residential spaces.